that particular issue with respect to disability and the overall context of that article, we will be using this article as a tool to understand the concept of rights based approach. In your prelim syllabus, you will see rights issues. Rights. What is the definition of a right? What is a right? Claim of the citizens from the state. Again, linking it back to the social contract between the state and the individual. What is a state? Definition of a state. It has 4 components: sovereignty, territory, population, and government. Without sovereignty, you have nothing else. So, clear that concept is clear, right? Now, so in a two-way communication between an individual and a state, state will guarantee rights. Guarantee. No questions asked. Okay? And in the Indian context, we have duties. These duties in the Indian context, are they enforceable? Where do you have these duties? Part fundamental duties. Okay. A prerequisite to understand this concept of rights is to understand this social contract. Clear till now? The particular article that we are discussing is in the context of the rights of differently abled people or physically challenged. Okay. Now, what is the concept of welfare? Providing basic needs. What else? What do you think is welfare? What is the purpose of welfare? Okay, let's ask that question in the context of the social contract. Why do you think the state should strive to work for welfare? Why welfare? You know, you get an idea, right? What is welfare? What is welfare? No, that is equality. Okay, that is the concept of equality. But what is the concept of welfare? I'm not asking what is the purpose. What is the meaning? Welfare means an activity that is taken up. Now you tell the purpose. What is the purpose? To make sure all the citizens are on a same platform. Okay, so it is done with an intent of reducing the historical gaps. Let's say lower caste versus upper caste. This is a most standard feature of Indian society, right? Similarly, there can be many more disadvantages for different sections of the society. Try to come on time. Okay, there can be many disadvantaged sections. For each disadvantage, the policy measure should be different. So the intent of welfare is to address that specific problem. Now, what are the problems of this section? Disability. Okay, we're just talking about overall concept here, but what is the problem of disabled section? They cannot utilize the facilities if a special concern is not shown towards them. The purpose of state is to make sure that everybody is feeling empowered. So the purpose of welfare is empowering. What do you mean by empower? Participate. Just give a wrong answer also, it's fine. Empower. What is meaning of empower? Giving the ability. So, in 1998, Amartya Sen, he's an economist. He came up with a concept called development as freedom. And in this, he is talking about, any guess? Capability, exactly. So, the purpose of welfare is to focus and give people that capability. Alright. What do you mean by capabilities here? Anything that can make sure that the individual explore their potential. Let's say, for example, you are here, there is someone else here. Okay, and if I ask someone to climb a wall somewhere here, do you think this person will be finding it easy? This person may not be able to find it easy because of the gap. Doing an activity in such a way that you reduce this gap, maybe place a stool here and then ask the person to cross. Once you are here, we have brought them on a same level. Empowerment means doing activities like this. Wherever there are gaps, wherever there are problems for that particular society, section of the society, you take a measure in such a way that that gap is filled. Now, it is in this context that welfare should become rights based. What do you mean by rights based? It is not a charity. You are entitled to get. What do you mean by entitlement? Compulsory, mandatory, by virtue of being a citizen. So, from a charity based to a welfare based approach is how we have to move towards. If that is the case, why is the government or why are the legislatures, they're not enforcing these rights, or why are they not creating rights for everything? Because there will be an associated cost attached to that. If you are making something mandatory, it becomes expensive. Having said that, you should know where to spend that money. It is justified if it empowers people. So the concept of welfare is to empower, and it is in this context you should know where to spend your money. Freebies are not a way to empower people. You should see the outcome of an activity. If you're just spending money which is not empowering people, you should look at the policy design. You should look at the law. This is the overall philosophy of any rights-based approach. And we will deploy this understanding in the context of disabled rights. Now we are talking about a time period where every service is a digital service. Mostly, almost. All the government services are getting digitized. Is it a wrong thing or a good thing? Good thing. Why do you think it's a good thing? It provides accountability and transparency. Is that it? More than anything, it's ease of transaction. Today, if you want to pay your power bill, water bill, you no longer have to go and stand in a line like you used to do 20 years ago, 10 years ago. Having said that, if the same digital India is not addressing the problems of certain section, don't you think you are completely excluding them? Okay, completely excluding them from developmental narrative. I'll just give you a case study. Same power bill. You want to pay a power bill. You take out your phone pay, Paytm, etc., go to that section, pay the bill, walk out. What if the person is visually impaired? And that person has to go to work. Now, because of the lack of access, that person has to go and stand in a line, spend half a day. That will lead to a loss of pay. And it is not empowering in any way. If this person goes and stand in a line and asks for, a leave, half a day leave, do you think the employer will give that leave? No, right? It cannot be a reason. So any activity taken up by the government in terms of governance cannot be a disruptor for any section of the society, and if it is the case, we need to take measures to correct it. So Digital India, which is supposed to be an enabler to empower, if that very Digital India is becoming a roadblock, why is it a roadblock, you might ask? A large section of the society is getting access, right? Let's take the same example. Since it is so convenient, all the people are not wasting their time on this. This person has to waste that time. There is a loss of opportunity there. The employer will have an impression and a prejudice that, okay, if I employ this kind of a person, maybe I will have to lose out on my productivity, which will lead to an exclusion. So naturally, there will be something called an exclusion bias, which gets reinforced from time to time through technologies like this. So are we saying that technology is bad? No. Technology should not just be, an enabler, but also adaptable, usable by every section of the society. If you take your NCRTs, the NCRT begins with something called Gandhi's talisman. Welfare, according to Gandhiji, is in such a way that even the poorest of the poor man, the most disadvantaged person, can also have a sense of belonging that, okay, I am also being cared for. That's the kind of governance systems that we should create. And it is in this framework that we have to put this article. So what did we understand? We understood the concept of rights-based issues, why it is important to move away from charity to right. Then we understood the problem of vulnerable sections who are at disadvantage. The concept of welfare, which is meant to empower. One strategy, the most effective strategy in a democracy to empower, is take a rights-based approach. And in a country where Digital India is becoming a norm, it is important to make digital access a fundamental right. Why is it called fundamental? Without this, your identity as a human being, your dignity as a human being can be taken away. Is that clear? So, you should ensure that your dignity is protected. You as a state, you should ensure that the dignity of every individual is protected, and that is the overall purpose for which governance exists. Clear? Now let's go forward. I've posted this article on the Telegram channel. You can go to this Telegram channel and have a look. Okay. Now what is the agenda of this session? How will we structure this session? Firstly, you have to identify any rights issue, not just this issue, any rights issue. You have to identify the core right that we have to demand. When you talk about any vulnerable sections, can you tell me who are the other vulnerable sections that you can think of? Gender, okay, gender based discrimination. Caste, race, children, old age. Who else? Tribes or PVTGs, migrant labor or agriculture sector laborers. And then we have LGBTs can be covered under this gender thing. Okay, so these are the various sections that are available, right? For all these sections, this is the framework in which you have to carry out your thought process. Firstly, you have to identify the core right that we have to demand, and most of the times it is within these three articles. The golden triangle of 14, 19 and 21. Why are they called the golden triangle? Why are these fundamental rights part of the golden triangle? Think. What is 14? Equal. 19? Freedom. And life and liberty. Now what did I tell you is the purpose of welfare? Opportunity, capability to realize your potential and live a dignified life where development is perceived as freedom, liberty. Okay, that's why Article 21 is important. It is linked to freedom, and to create this you need an approach where everyone is considered to be equal. Equal means not treating them equally, treating them equitably, where you are giving equality in terms of dignity. It is not like one person's dignity is less, one person's dignity is more, and it is not dependent on their money, their caste, their gender, their place of birth, whatever may be the parameter. The Indian Constitution recognizes the dignity of every individual equally. Remember, it is about the dignity. Equality, for ensuring the dignity, there is an equality of opportunity. When I say equality of opportunity, it is not treating them equally. Treating them in such a way that their disadvantages are not becoming a barrier to realize their potential. And this is why we have affirmative action. One of the affirmative action is reservation. Clear? That is why it is called the golden triangle. Anyway, let's see. So after that, you need to know what are the laws that are existing right now on this issue. What is the legal architecture? Then you have to understand if there is any policy which is trying to give a governance structure to this law. Then see if there is any flaw. Is the policy excluding someone or is it including someone? Then you have to see the review responses. What do I mean by this review responses? Judicial and civil society interventions. Always in your answers, it's better to quote Supreme Court judgments which support your argument. Why Supreme Court? Because the final interpreter of Indian Constitution is Supreme Court, is the guardian of our rights. Why civil society bodies? Because historically many disadvantaged sections got their rights because of civil society interventions. Even political reforms, as a matter of fact. There is this civil society organization called Association for Democratic Reforms. You will notice this ADR. You will notice this in lot of issues associated with RPA, Representation of People Act. It will be dealt in your polity classes. I'm just giving you context. Okay. So once you understand all these parameters, the problems that are there, then you can reframe this as rights issue. Ultimately, the purpose is dignity, access, and inclusion. All right. This is how we are supposed to look at fundamental rights issues. Any article, any current affair issue that must have come in the news will have the same structure. Clear? All right. Now, let's see. What is the guiding principle in the context of this article? Rights are meaningful only when access is universal. Denial of access is denial of dignity. Do I have to explain this? Is it self-understood? That's what we have been discussing right now. That is a core principle. Now, what is the constitutional framework? So when you're writing your answers, it's important to quote articles, because just principles is not enough. Those need to be placed within the context of Indian Constitution as a proof that you are well read and you understand the logic. So that logical argument is what sets your answers apart. Article 21 expands right to life to include dignity and accessibility. Understood? That's what we have been discussing, the golden triangle part. Then we are talking about judicial interpretations. You will notice that Article 21 keeps on expanding continuously, because the idea of liberty is an evolving concept. See, the purpose is always clear. Nobody should be left out. Let's say tomorrow in a world where everybody has access to robots, on that day, having a robot to help you out will become a fundamental right. Imagine a world where everybody is having a universal access to AI, where something like Neuralink is placed in your head. And let's say, in a hypothetical case, if one person gets access to UPSC paper, you can demand it as a fundamental right. Is that the case? No, don't go in that direction. You have to move in direction of empowerment. Right does not mean seeking. So the direction is equally important. Right does not mean that we have to move in the direction of becoming lazy, because the quality of democracy depends on the wisdom of the people. artificial intelligence should never reduce human beings to slaves of technology. Any digital technology should not make people insensitive to the needs, evolving needs of a society. So the critical thought, which is the fundamental characteristic of only human beings out of all the life forms, the highest amount of consciousness or thought should always be deployed whenever we are using any technology. And it is with that argument we have to focus on digital rights as a way to empower people only, not to make them lazy in terms of having a critical thought. So here in Article 51A, what is this Article 51A? Duties. In this, there is a word called scientific temper. Do you know what is scientific temper? What is scientific temper? What is thinking rationally? Questioning everything. Let's just leave it at that, or shall we also do something to try find answers? Questioning everything with an intent to find an answer is scientific temper. What is science? What is logic? Logic is something that asks why. But the intent of logic is not just to question and leave it at that. It is also to understand and find out an answer. Scientific temper is about having a cause and effect analytical frame of mind. That's why when I say we have to be logical, you are problem solvers, and the approach for our exam is always a problem solution orientation, because that's the most logical thing to do. The reason why you are here is because of this single reason. Look at everything like a problem statement. There is a cause, and if you understand the cause, it will show its effect because of the process laid down. Fix the process, outcome changes. Clear? Finally, we have to understand the legal protection. We have something called the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act. Let's see. We have talked about 21, 14, and then there is this Article 38. Where do you find Article 38? Directive Principles of State Policy. Okay. We also have to talk about Supreme Court judgments. So it is in this context, please note this down. Rajiv Rathore versus Union of India case. This case should definitely be there in any topic that has got to do with digital India and rights of disabilities. Without the mention of this case, for sure you are not going to score marks. Supreme Court held that digital access is a constitutional imperative. What do you mean by this? Constitutional imperative. Because the Supreme Court interpreted this in the light of Article 21. To ensure dignity, without having access to internet or digital services, it will become difficult. Now when I say access to digital services, it just does not mean giving them a mobile phone. The problem is they are not able to look at it. For example, if a visually challenged person is not able to look at the mobile phone, there should be some empathy. Where did you hear this word empathy in the syllabus? Ethics. So everything begins with that ethics, the intent. Ethics is a framework of thought that will solve social problems. As simple as that. Whatever feels right for that society, they will consider it as ethical. And the purpose of ethics and the purpose of welfare and the purpose of justice is to keep the society together. Therefore, you can say constitution is a moral framework, ethical framework. The reason why there is a limitation on the government, constitutionalism, it's because the limitation on the government is because of the same moral reasoning that power can't be placed in a single hand. It is broken down. That concept is called separation of powers. And if you just break down powers, create 3 different power centers and say that you will have checks and balances, what if there is no accountability? That's also important. So any issues in current affairs is mostly about these problems. Separation of powers, checks and balances, accountability, transparency, rights. The same themes keep on repeating everywhere. Once you understand the concept, all of them will become easy to structure an argument. You just have to note down the facts and keep on practicing. Clear? Now, Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act 2016 is considered to be a paradigm shift. Okay. What do you mean by a paradigm shift? What is a paradigm? Any idea? Sorry? Examples. Paradigm means a landmark shift in the way we are approaching. Let's say if you have a spectrum from negative end to the positive end. Okay? Consider it like a scale. If you move the scale from negative to the positive end, it's considered to be a paradigm shift. So this act is considered a paradigm shift in the way we are approaching the problems of people with disabilities. So you need to know the legal architecture, right? Of course, this is based on the golden triangle of fundamental rights 14, 19 and 21. Having said that, you need to argue why it is a paradigm shift. Let's look at those. So firstly, when you look at the problem, the very philosophy as to how we approached is changed. Social barrier approach. When you say disability, we are not taking it as a problem of the individual. In a social contract between the state and the individual, you cannot blame an individual for their natural disadvantage. It is the responsibility of the state to acknowledge them and give them a sense of belonging. Otherwise, it will create a disturbance in the society. So we are not looking at disability as an individual problem, but the responsibility of the state to give inclusive infrastructure. That is why it is a paradigm shift. Secondly, there are many UN conventions on the rights that you need to give to the disabled people. This convention is the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. This is the convention which will give a framework of thought on how to address the problems. So before this 2016 law, we did not have complete alignment with this convention, which are like the global standards. Let's say there is a foreign tourist who may be disadvantaged, differently abled. If they visit our country and they do not have an access to, let's say, national monuments, do you think they'll feel left out? In a country that speaks about Atithi Devo Bhava, it's important to have an alignment. Clear? Next up, section 42. There is one important section. This article, today's article mentions this. So, mandates accessibility to digital infrastructure. So, this is a right based in a statute. We created a law saying that this is their right, and yet we are not providing them that. Don't you think this is a failure of the state? Yet, yes, as of now, we are falling short. There's always an opportunity to make things better. So acknowledge the problem first. Don't just criticize, because technologies, private companies, they are built not for taking the worst case scenario. They are built for profit. They don't want to waste their time. That's how they will look at it. They'll only look at market. State and market cannot be the same thing. State can dictate markets. And that's the power of the state. And that's why they are sovereign. Clear? So this section 42 is something that you need to remember. I'm summarizing the entire entire law with respect to this rights of persons with disabilities. Firstly, the number of disabilities increased from 7 to 21. That is why it is a paradigm shift. So if I have to argue why it is a paradigm shift, you need to note down, right? This is not there in today's article, just so you can note it down. You can take this notes and put it in your vulnerable sections notes. They might teach you again, but since you are anyway doing it, do it now. The number of disabilities increased from 7 to 21, and they also include blood disorders. These blood disorders can be asked in your prelims exam. Sickle cell anemia, thalassemia. Heard these names? They will be taught in your basic classes. Next. Till now there was a welfare based approach. Now it became right. From charity to right. Before this law, disability was treated as a medical condition, not as a responsibility of the state. That changed. The responsibility to make people feel inclusive, was just that of the government before. Now it is also the mandate of private sector also. So non-discrimination should become a norm. Next up. There were vague provisions before in the previous law. Now mandatory legal proceedings like special courts, a separate enforcement mechanism with clear definitions. What will happen if you don't follow this law? Penal provisions, enabling provisions for the people, whether they can go to the right and claim it. All this are given in the Act. They got reservation in educational institutions. That is one more. And accessibility standards, meaning we have to standardize in alignment with UNCPRD. So the standards are clearly defined and established as per the framework. Okay? Let's go back. We have talked about the concept of social contract. Within that, what is the duty of individuals? What is the right that is to be bestowed upon individuals by the state? We discussed that. Concept of welfare as an enabler, an empowering agent. We discussed the constitutional provisions, Article 14, 19, 21, the link between them, Article 38 of DPSP, Article 51A, scientific temper. So, the principles involved in the way you argue will set you apart from the rest of the crowd in your answers. What is the Supreme Court case? Rajiv Rathore versus. What did the Supreme Court say? Constitutional imperative to give access to infrastructure. For whom? Persons with PWDs, basically. Okay? Clear till now? You have to complete your learning in the class itself like this. Now, digital KYC. What do you mean by KYC? Know your customer. Why should the service providers know about you, because if you use it for illegal activities like money laundering or anything, that can be a problem. If we want to track criminals, we have to know the existence of their identity. We have to know their identity, their existence, where do they stay, where do they operate, for what purpose are they using this bank accounts, etc. Everything should be known. So this is a case study in exclusion. There is a law called PMLA, Prevention of Money Laundering Act. Does this have anything to do with PWDs? Not really. The purpose is different. The purpose here is to protect the national security, sovereignty of this nation. State concept, sovereignty, population, territory, government. In that, sovereignty is the first principle, and national security is associated with that sovereignty. Let's say if illegal activities are happening, you watch this movie Shivaji, Rajnikant, where money will be taken out from the country, it will enter into India through NGO route, black money becomes white money. In that, since it's Rajnikant, his intent is good, he will do everything good for the society, because the state did not support him. If the state is doing its job properly, there is no need for heroes like Rajnikant. We don't need vigilante justice. There is glorification of an individual. If there is glorification of an individual in a society, consider that society is not stable. If we are always looking for a hero to save us, either we are in a proper commercial movie setup or a society where there is constant tension. We need to look at the institutional strength. The process should take care of itself. There is this famous speech by Atal Bihari Vajpayee in the parliament when there is a no confidence motion in 1996 or 8, no, probably somewhere, I don't remember the date. In that he said, "Sarkare aayenge jayenge, lekin desh yahi pe rahega." So in that concept of state, sovereignty, population, territory, government, the fourth component, it can be BJP, Congress, whatever may be the party, it doesn't matter. They will come, they will leave, but the strength of the nation lies in the quality of democracy, the quality of institutions that we have. So always demand accountability in terms of the quality of institutions. Focus on the processes. Everything else will be taken care of. So when we blame the governments, it's often because we ourselves don't participate in that democracy. There's a lot of debate about the quality of politicians that are entering into legislative houses. There are a lot of criminals, etc., etc. Look at the voting percentages. Hyderabad has 29% the last time. Do you think we really have the right to ask that question? When almost 70 plus percentage of the population did not even participate in a democracy, you cannot give an excuse कि anyway nothing will change. कोई भी देश perfect नहीं रहेगा, उसे perfect बनाना पड़ता है. Make the country perfect by participating and at least try. Do your bit. Right. So, coming back. So this case study of exclusion is based in PMLA. So we have screen reader barriers. For example, if you want to carry out a digital KYC through a video call or something, if the person is unable to read, that's first barrier. If iris scan is not working properly, or for any reason biometric is not working properly, that is the second problem. Let's say, unfortunately, this is a case. acid victim attacks. Sorry, acid attack victims. Their face is disfigured because of such a cruel crime. That itself is so traumatizing for their life. Things like this happen. It's a constant reminder that you don't belong to this society. You're completely excluding their, you know, identity from your. It's like you're removing them from the state. A sense of belonging, which kills their hope. That's not how we want our society to be like. Facial recognition. That's one more problem. Document scanning hurdles. So sometimes they're, you are expected to physically produce some documents in some procedures for some financial services. That's again a barrier. What will be the result? The PWDs will be denied financial identity and thus denied welfare, mobility and autonomy. GS3 inclusive growth. Inclusive, the word inclusive means all sections of the society should participate. One of the strategy for inclusion or inclusive growth is financial inclusion. At the very first step, they are excluding them. So fix the process. So what should be the 3-layered digital state framework? Firstly, improve the access. Normally, for all the citizens, it is just about giving broadband, mobile, national fiber optic network, and then data centers, common service centers at Gram Panchayat level. All this is fine. But what about PWDs and their special needs? The government should do something, right? Second layer is the identity layer. You have the JAM KYC, Jandan Aadhaar Mobile Trinity, JAM Trinity. The 3 things that you need. Jandan means a bank account. Pradhan Mantri Jandan Yojana. You're aware of this? Financial inclusion. Clear? Aadhaar, mobile, PAN card, KYC. All of this is fine for identification. Again, if there are some problems in identification, you're excluding them. So, the 3-step process should also factor in the problems of PWDs. Service layer. You have UPI, government e-marketplace, other kinds of services like DigiLocker, etc., etc. All this, let's say an entrepreneur who is differently able wants to approach the government and avail the one-stop solution like a single window clearance program. So much of documentation is reduced by that single window clearance programs or schemes. It can either be of the state or the central government. But if the very identification problem is there at the step 1, that process is effectively stopped there itself. And you don't want that to happen, right? That's a problem. So this 3-layered digital state framework should consider all these problems. So we have defined the problem statement: access, identity and service. Corresponding problems should be added and their solution should be added, justified by Rajiv Ratori versus State of India, Union of India, Supreme Court judgment. Clear? So Supreme Court said that digital barriers will create right violations. Therefore, it directed the government to create solutions for this. Why is it doing? Because it is the guardian. Having said that, we will arrive at another article somewhere down this week about Article 142. There's a lot of debate. President posed some questions to the Supreme Court. Even President has doubts in Indian polity. Okay. So let's see how will Supreme Court clarify this issue. Let's get back to that issue. The same problem was also raised by the Vice President a few days ago. What is the context? Why is it a problem? Let's see in further classes. But for today, let's stick to this. Legal foundation. The concept of substantive equality. What do you mean by this substantive equality? Equality can be of two things. Treating everyone equally for the sake of it. Look at the substance in the argument. Substantive meaning here the focus of the substance is that they don't have equal opportunities. There are natural disadvantages which has to be plugged by the state because of the paradigm shift in the approach. Expanded protection. This argument is not just valid for this one section of the people. There are other vulnerable sections. So do you expect a case every single time? Do you think one person who is affected by that problem, they should approach the Supreme Court every time? No, right? So that's why they expanded the protection to other sections of the society. Elderly, linguistic minorities, technologically excluded. What do you mean by this? Let's say you don't know how to read English or Hindi. How will I get access to this? That's also a problem. You might be technologically illiterate. Do you think they should be excluded? No, right? So that's why Supreme Court spoke about this section of the people. That's what we have been talking about. How do you now interlink this topic, which is a core polity discussion that we have had, to other sections of the syllabus? Firstly, GS2 governance, policy failure, straightforward. Vulnerable sections, straightforward. Then in GS3 science and technology, and then link it to GS1 society. Poorly designed technology creates systemic exclusion. Keyword, systemic exclusion. See, the reason why inclusive growth is a topic in economy is because it is rooted in the society. There are barriers created sociologically. Our Indian society has many layers of exclusion. Whether it can be through caste, through a gender bias, through a prejudice against certain kind of professions. Basically, anything that goes with our traditional value. Let's say, for example, you talk to an old school, let's say a banker. They say computers are bad because change is scary. But the fact of life is change is inevitable. Societies evolve. And if you are still stuck to that, dogmas, those prejudices, biases, that this is good, this is bad, you are not accepting any new ideas. So societies don't evolve. That's why you need ethics. Ethics is a framework that keeps the dialogue continuously between generations. Ethics is the framework that will stop the good values from eroding. It's not like old generation has everything bad and the new generation is everything good. There are some horrible things about both the generations. A dialogue between these two generations will help us remove the bad things, stick and create a new collective wisdom from the younger generation and the older generation. And the methodology of that dialogue is given in ethics. The reasoning for that is based in certain principles like empathy. The argumentation is based on this ethical principles. Clear? So this is how you are supposed to create an argument and write an answer in your mains. every single day we are not looking at just one issue, we are looking at a framework of thought so that you can deploy that thought in your newspaper reading. These are the prelims relevant facts that you can download from the PPT. You don't have to note it down. These are the mains level analysis. I'll give you and explain some keywords, how to capture this whole idea in this single PPT. The entire 1 hour discussion is about your preparation and understanding, because this is the first time that you are learning about the concept in a sequence. But you don't have this much time to read an article or anything, you need quick notes. So how do you recollect? Say something like this: Digital India cannot be disabling India. You capture the entire idea in a single phrase. You have to redefine access as not just availability but as usability. Third point, substantive equality is going beyond formal equality in digital governance. And how do you design policies for justice? Public policy imperative. Justice is a public policy imperative that should be the guiding light. These arguments are the principles. Now you use the facts at the prelims level or from the article and support your case and link it to the constitution, the golden triangle of 14, 19 and 21, which makes your answer the most perfect answer out there. Do this for every topic, you will be a topper. It's not easy because now I have deconstructed everything and I have given it to you. Even after doing this, if you are not able to, at least put effort to learn how to do it, you are at loss. So this framework is reusable for analyzing any problem with respect to digital technology, whether it is facial recognition, online education, cybercrime redressal, AI bias, same thing, same argument. Okay? Finally, technology should be used for dignity. Our target should be to focus on Article 21, give respect to Section 42 of the Act, which says that digital access should be universal and therefore include 100% of the population, not just here, everywhere, in every section of the society. This is the framework of thought. Okay? Access to technology is about human dignity. Clear? If you use this framework of thought, you will be able to write any answers. And you also have a word limit. There is a reason why there is a word limit. Okay? 150 words. That's why you need to have clear phrases. 150 and 250 words. Just because we took a 45-minute, 1-hour lecture doesn't mean you have to prepare this topic for 45 minutes and 1 hour. This is just a beginner way of learning. Once you are in advanced stages, a senior, all this should happen in like 2 minutes. You will just arrive at the final keywords, facts only. Always take a note of facts from your newspaper article, nothing else. Facts and maybe some key phrases. If you note down arguments, you are lost. That's when it becomes bulky. Okay? Clear? See you. We'll meet tomorrow.